I'm sure Beyonce and Jay-Z had no idea of the firestorm that would ignite with their recent trip to Castro-controlled Cuba to celebrate their 5th anniversary. Many Cuban Americans, especially, like Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, my guest right now, are outraged. The congressman joins us from the Rotunda in D.C. So, Congressman, what's the big deal? First of all, welcome, bienvenido. What's the big deal when so many beat the travel ban, they attach themselves to this academic group or that professional group? What's the big deal with Beyonce and Jay-Z?
Well, I know some people might think that it's not a big deal, like it's not a big deal to have Rodman meeting with the North Korean dictator. But in the case of Cuba, here's the problem, that there's law, and we have to follow the law. I don't care, Geraldo, how famous you are, how wealthy you are. We're a country of laws, and nobody should be and can be above the law. And that's one of the issues that we're looking into. And there's a reason why that law exists. This is a regime that murders its own people, that in jails, that imprisons its own people, who harbors terrorists, fugitives from American law. And so there's a reason why we do not want to do things that fund that terrorist regime. And so we're asking the question very simply, did they follow the law? Did they get a license? If they did, and then did they follow the requirements of the law in that license? And if they didn't, why not? Here's the interesting thing. We wrote a letter just asking for more information. We got a letter back that just explained what the law is. Heck, I know what the law is, and remember, my brother Lincoln was one of the guys who wrote the law. We're asking for specific information. It's very strange, as you saw now from the White House spokesman, that they're kind of dancing all over the place without giving us a straight answer. That leads me to believe that maybe something was not quite kosher here.
Now, you said that the safety of America might be imperiled by their trip. What do you mean by that, Congressman?
Here's the issue. We have a regime that has murdered Americans. We have a regime that harbors terrorists and fugitives from American law that are living the high life in Cuba. So we have policy to stop U.S. dollars from funding that anti-American terrorist thug regime. That's what the law is. So what we're asking is, if that's what the law is, and again, the administration has always stated tourism is outlawed, is not legal, and yet it seems, from what we've seen, that this was a 5th anniversary tourism trip. That would not be legal. It could very well be that this administration, however, I don't know, allowed them to go anyways. We're trying to find the answers as to what happened there, because nobody, I don't care how famous you are, should be above the law. And this is an issue of U.S. national security.
Congressman, we're pals now, or we allow tourists to Vietnam, where 50,000 of our GIs, lost their lives. We're allowing tourism to Russia, to communist China. Has the embargo with Cuba maybe outlived its usefulness?
Here's the difference. We're dealing with a state sponsor of terrorism. This is not Vietnam. This is more like Iran. This is more like Assad's Syria. Now, if we knew that one of the biggest funding sources for the Iran regime was U.S. travel, I think we would all be outraged and we would say, let's not do that. That's funding that state sponsor of terrorism. In this case, this is a regime that has shot down American airplanes. That today, and since December of '09, there is a man named Alan Gross who was put in prison in Cuba because he was trying to help the Jewish community in Cuba connect to the internet. This is different than Vietnam or China, as despicable as I think those regimes are. This is even worse. This is more like, for example, Tehran. If you want to compare something, compare it more like North Korea or compare it to Iran. Obviously, nobody wants to travel to Iran, but a lot of folks think it's cool, like we just saw now, to travel and hang out in Cuba because they have quaint old cars and not be too concerned about the human rights violations, about the fact that there are people in prison right now.
We all remember that wrenching case in the 1990s when Elian Gonzalez, the youngster, was given back to his Cuban father, taken back to Cuba. But then in the last couple of days, didn't Cuba repay that with this fast return of that Florida couple that had kidnapped their own children? Cuba scooped them up at the Marina Hemingway and sent them all back to the U.S., where the parents are in prison now and the children reunited with their grandparents. Is that an indication that maybe Cuba wants to loosen things up?
No, I mean, the two cases are not even similar. Here's the reality. What is happening in Cuba right now is that the repression is up. The number of arrests, of reported arrests, have been double what they were the year before. They're holding an American hostage, throwing him in prison for just trying to help folks connect to the internet. They're still harboring terrorists and fugitives from American law, including individuals who killed a police officer in the state of New Jersey and others. So if anything, things have gotten worse. And the question is this: should we be funding a state sponsor of terrorism, an enemy of the United States?
So does Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart allege that Beyonce and Jay-Z gave aid and comfort to our nation's enemies?
No, what I'm alleging is that we don't have the facts. What I'm alleging is that, according to what the regime said and what the press has said, is that it was a strictly tourism trip. If that's the case, it would be a violation of the law. If they were given a license to do that, and then those who gave them the license clearly did so erroneously. So we're just trying to get to the facts. Look, I don't think any of us should ever be scared of getting the facts. That's all we're asking for. And again, I repeat, nobody should be above the law.
Congressman Mario Diaz-Balart, appreciate you coming on, mate.
Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
You too.